ADHD family, I'm Yakini coming to you from ADHD Love, and welcome to another episode of ADHD Love Parent Talk, where I invite different guests that can provide you information that can hopefully help you manage yours and your family's ADHD journey. I just want to make it a little bit easier for you. So today I am very excited to introduce you to Julie, and it's pronounce your last name again, please.
Catalano.
Catalano is a beautiful name. And I'm so excited to have her today because we are going to talk about strategies, really helping kids that, have some trouble doing their homework and studying. She has some strategies around that. So also to help your kids study a little bit easier. So I'm very excited to have her on this show today. So please, Julie, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get into this direction of the neurodiverse kids and the study habits?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Yakini. I always tell people that I'm an engineer, and I say that because I want everyone to know how much I love math and science, and I think it's important, and I know how to talk about it. And I assumed until my kids were diagnosed with ADHD that every kid just went to school and kind of learned the same, sat there in class, listened, could come home and do the homework, and I was really wrong. So this all started when I learned that one of my kids had ADHD, and I had to change my whole approach, not only to parenting, but to helping him manage the schoolwork and the learning process.
Okay. So we're going to get more into the depths of that. So let's actually talk a little bit first about the ADHD journey. So when did you find out? So you actually have two boys that have ADHD, is that correct?
That's correct. So when my older son was in 4th grade, he was just struggling. There were a lot of teacher notes in the daily folder. There were a lot of emails to me just saying he didn't want to sit still, would talk with friends, was always off task. And I just wondered why he couldn't sit there and listen. We would talk over and over again, and he would tell me it was boring or stupid. And at the time, I didn't really realize that that was him trying to tell me he wasn't following. He didn't understand. So I started talking to friends and talking until someone suggested, hey, have you had him evaluated? Maybe he has ADHD. And a light bulb went off because it had never dawned on me before. And I wish somebody would have mentioned it sooner. I was happy to go, have him evaluated, find the right professional to do it, and get more information. I just had no idea.
So what age was he officially diagnosed? And what type?
Combined type, and he was, I'm trying to think, 9.
He was 9, okay. And so when you say the combined type, was it the hyperactivity impulsive or inattentive?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was the hyperactivity and impulsive.
Okay. And that's the same one that my son is also diagnosed with. Okay, so for your second son, how did that come about?
Well, after I had my oldest son diagnosed, and then, it almost took a year, I felt, to really get comfortable finding resources to educate myself and talk with the teachers and get the right plans in place at school. And once I felt like that had all calmed down a little bit and I was standing on solid ground, I knew what to do, I thought, well, I should probably have my second son evaluated and start the process with him a little sooner, now knowing what I know.
Gotcha, that makes sense. So now that you have these diagnoses, even with your first son, how did it feel to you? And did you talk to him about it? And how did he feel once he knew what was going on?
Yes, I did talk to my oldest son. I asked the neuropsychologist who evaluated him in my initial meeting with her for some advice on how to bring this up, because I knew I wanted to talk to my son without shame, without guilt, without any negativity. And so the language I settled on was saying, you know, this is somebody who has studied how brains work, and we are going to go meet this person to get more information. And you can just go through life with strategies, right, that help make things a little easier.
Oh, that's perfect. And so how did you bring it up with your second son?
So my second son is very inquisitive, very observant, the kind of child that asks you about 10,000 questions a day. So not that I keep things from him, but there's no way to keep it. So when he saw his older brother going to these appointments, talking to me about these issues, he knew something was going on. So he became aware of what this process was, seeing his older brother go through it. So when I brought up the idea to my younger son of, would you like to go meet the same neuropsychologist and have her talk to you and figure out how your brain works? He was totally on board. He was excited.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. So your first son, I'm assuming, I mean, was there some nervousness around it? But then your second son, because your first son had been diagnosed, it's like almost an excitement, right? It's wanting to be part of the club. And that's what I actually experienced with my daughter. You know, it was actually backwards. My youngest was diagnosed first. Even though I discovered it with my oldest, my youngest was diagnosed first. And it was almost like she wanted to be, right? And she was already going through the struggles, so it was a good thing when it happened. But everybody, it's really interesting when somebody wants to be part of the ADHD club, right? And she really wanted to be. And then when she was officially diagnosed, she was actually excited about it. That, and she understood what was going on with her. So is that kind of what you felt with your youngest?
Yes, definitely. And I think he is very aware of when school frustrates him, and going through the process of, you know, being evaluated and getting a diagnosis gives him words and phrases to describe himself, right? And how he thinks and how he learns. And it gives him a framework to have part of his identity, to talk to other teachers.
Gotcha.
And, you know, he's just not swimming in confusion.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So for parents who are just discovering that their child has ADHD, what are some of your tips, or what are some of the things that you did just to help them? And we're going to talk about more of the homework, you know, the study strategies in a second, but just generally, what are some of the tips that you would give to them just to manage on a day-to-day basis?
For me, what helped is going online and finding a few resources to rely on, because there are so many. Your channel is obviously a phenomenal one. But find a few resources so you feel like you have a baseline of information for how you want to go about your day with your kids. And then the other big part for me was shifting how I thought about their behavior, how they go through any kind of process, right? Whether it's packing the backpack for school, getting dressed for soccer practice, cleaning up dishes after dinner. They're going to go through it in a different way than I do. They're going to go through it in their own way, and they might forget and they might need some reminders. But I had to look at it from a different perspective of there's lots of different right ways to go through life as a kid. And I needed to be more accepting of the ways they were choosing, and guide them through it if they forgot or got confused, rather than forcing them to do chores or tasks one way.
That makes perfect sense. And you know, one of the other things, I was just sharing this with someone else, is that I have learned is I don't have to do things the way my parents did them. And, you know, my parents raised me a certain way, and that's how I started to raise my children, but it just did not work with them. And then on top of that, to be okay with that, to be okay that I don't do the same things that my parents do. My children think differently and behave differently and respond to directions differently, and I had to be okay with meeting them where they were, right? And that took some time for me. But once I got it, I'm good now. And it's been so much better. I mean, don't get me wrong, we still have our struggles, but it's just been so much better. So yeah, I think that's really cool.
And if I can just add on to what you just said, I think there is a lot of pressure as a parent to live up to expectations of our own parents and other parents that, are in our communities and school circles, because they have their own idea of what is the right way for a child to behave and act. And the more that we can ignore that, and because we are the best kind of measures of what's going on in our own households, we know what works. It feels right when we find processes that work. And so just to trust ourselves and to tune out the external people thinking it should be done another way.
I agree. I like that, Julie. I really agree with that. Okay, so let's talk about studying. So I know I struggled. I struggled for a while to really get a process in place for my children. So then that way they weren't like screaming to the top of their lungs when homework time was coming around. So please tell us and share with us, what do you do in your household? And what are some of your tips and tricks for studying and for doing homework?
I would say it first starts again with the child's like awareness of what the work actually is and when it needs to happen. And for my kids, homework is never something they want to talk about. And so I got this advice, I think it was from one of the speakers at the TEFOS summit,
Yes.
the Executive Function Online Summit, talks about asking your child to like have a meeting or like scheduling a meeting. Say, as a parent, my first instinct is to be like, oh my gosh, they have five assignments and they need to do it right now. But a better approach for me is to ask them, hey, I think you have a lot of work to do this week. Can we talk about it after dinner and make a plan? And so you're giving them a little heads up that you're not letting them off the hook, but you're also not going to be overbearing and bombard them right away when maybe they just need to relax a little bit after school. So scheduling the time to talk to it and then making a plan, helping them to identify what they need to work on, which tasks are going to be easier for them in the subjects they probably naturally like, and what's going to be harder. And then offering to sit there with them, because sometimes they want the help and sometimes they are, pushing me out of the room. So just kind of setting up that good environment to get it done, because they're never going to love doing homework. So I think trying to create that good setup and good foundation goes a long way.
So do you add any breaks in there? Like, how do you set up their schedule? Like, once you guys decide what that schedule is going to look like, I mean, how does it flow?
It varies all the time. And that's the one thing that I love consistency personally, but with the kids, depending on the day, right, and their energy level and their mood, sometimes they might need more breaks, right, every 5 minutes or every 2 math problems, or other times they might go 20 or 30 minutes at whatever they're working on. And so it's really all over the place, and I just kind of have to go with the flow. But I hang around to make sure they do circle back to what they're working on, that they don't kind of, float off to the living room and turn on the TV and get distracted.
That makes sense. So once you have put this strategy in place, or these strategies in place, what have you seen? I mean, what differences have you seen?
So I feel like when my kids feel like they have perceived control, right, and ownership of the process of doing their homework, they are much more likely to do it on their terms rather than me kind of dictating some kind of order or schedule. It gives them time to think about how their own brain is working and how their brain is going to navigate through, reading, doing math problems, doing an assignment online. And that not only helps with their own planning, right, and their executive function, but it helps them feel like they're more in control of a process that is something that's not preferred, but at least they are having some say in how they manage it. So I see less arguing with them, and a lot more just acceptance on their part that they have to find a way to get it done.
I like that. I like that. And I've like you said, every day is different when you are working with a child that has ADHD. The schedule on Monday is definitely not the same as it is on Wednesday. So what I do is that we have the general base structure, right? These are the things, like you said. So these are the things that you told me that you need to do. I even asked, what order would you like to do it in? Because it doesn't matter, right? And, he'll put down, because you'll put it on the list, what order. We'll talk about where do you want to take your breaks, and he will put down where he wants his breaks, and then he goes at it. And it is interesting. To your point, I have to watch during those breaks if he actually goes back to doing his homework, right? But overall, because he already wrote it down, he already knows when his breaks are, it has been better. It has been a lot better. So so I totally agree with that. But that takes time. It takes, understanding how your child works and then putting those things in place. So, and then I do different things with my older daughter too, because her struggles are different. So, but it has been better.
Well, that's good. Yes. And even with my two kids having the same ADHD diagnosis, I can tell their different parts of their executive function vary very much just between the two of them. So there are different ways I have to support one versus the other.
That makes sense. That does make sense. So do you have any type of, just kind of wrapping things up, do you have any type of resources that you use? Any recommendations in terms of reading material or YouTube channels? I mean, is there anything that you can recommend to the audience to check out, whether it be on ADHD or more on studying habits?
So I have one website that I really like. Seth Perler is an executive function coach, and his website and the TEFOS summit that he runs was an immense help to me. It gave me so much information to understand how our brains work and put that in the context of my kids. So Seth Perler's website for sure. And then there are two books that I really liked. Can I show the books?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, I have Smart But Scattered.
Yes.
Is one I really like, because this one taught me a lot about executive function, and there's little survey checklists that you can take or you can fill it out for your kid. And that helped me kind of compare what my strengths and weaknesses are to my kids and understand the disconnects we were having, why something that I thought would be so easy for me was more of a challenge for them. It was another light bulb moment. And then the other book is The Self-Driven Child. And this one helped me a lot understanding motivation in people and how to get your kids to be self-motivated, right? So you're not having to kind of be that person reminding them all the time, how to take their interest and motivation and help it grow.
I like that. Thank you. So any last minute thoughts, anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to bring up, or any last minute tips?
Just that what I like to study and talk about and blog about, homework and studying, I write about what's worked for us, but every kid is different. And something that works for my kids might work for your kids or others, or it might not. I think we just have to stay patient and be creative and use our awareness, helping the kids adapt, because school assignments and work and tests are never going to match up with our ADHD kids. So we just have to find ways to break that assignment down and help it suit our children.
Very cool. All right, Julie, so I'm so excited. If they have any questions for you, how can you be reached? And I think you have a website, don't you?
I do. My website is studytoolsbyjules.com. Yes, so I have a couple of study homework tips we've done, and I try to write weekly blog posts, and I'm on Instagram, and that's
What is your handle?
all I can at jules.cat360.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I truly appreciate it. It was really, really good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that is another episode of ADHD Love Parent Talk. So if you would like more content like this, please definitely hit the like button. Again, don't forget to subscribe. And I will definitely be bringing more really good content in the future. So again, Julie, thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, Yakini.
All right. Bye.